July 17, 1944, near Saint-Lô, Normandy, France. The sun beat down on the hedgerows, turning the air thick with dust and cordite. The battlefield smelled of diesel and death. A Sherman tank, its olive-drab hull still smoking, lay tilted in a crater, tracks torn, turret half blown open. A German reconnaissance unit approached cautiously through the smoke. Leading them was Oberleutnant Ernst Hartmann, a panzer officer from the 2nd SS Panzer Division, Das Reich. His uniform was caked with grime, his nerves frayed from weeks of fighting the Americans through the bocage. Hartmann raised his field glasses and surveyed the wreck. The Sherman was ugly, boxy, crude, the kind of tank his men laughed at around campfires. But as he drew closer, his expression hardened. Something about it felt different. "Keep your eyes open," he muttered. "There may be survivors." 2 grenadiers climbed onto the hull, pried open the commander's hatch, and peered inside. The stench of burnt fuel and flesh hit them instantly. One recoiled, coughing, but the other called out, "Herr Oberleutnant, you'll want to see this." Hartmann climbed up, his boots clanging against the steel. Inside the turret, amid the wreckage of ammunition and scorched maps, sat something unexpected. A small radio transceiver, its dials intact, headset still hanging from a hook. He frowned. "A radio? Inside the tank?" The grenadier nodded. "Yes, sir. And there's another one down below, near the driver's position." Hartmann blinked. 2 radios. He crouched to inspect the equipment. The labels read SCR 508, American-made, compact, and neatly installed. The wiring was professional, built into the tank's frame, not an afterthought. Nearby, he found a laminated card with signal codes, unit frequencies, call signs, even a brief instruction manual. Hartmann's mind began to race. In his own Panzer IV, communication was primitive. 1 radio set for the platoon leader, signal flags for everyone else. Orders took minutes to pass down. Maneuvering under fire was chaos. But these Americans, every tank had one of these. He stood silently for a long moment, staring at the blackened machine. Around him, his men scavenged ammunition and maps, oblivious. To them, it was just another enemy tank, but to Hartmann, it was something far more dangerous. A glimpse into why the Allied armor seemed to move with uncanny coordination. He turned to his adjutant. "Get the technical officer. Tell him to bring his men, and be careful with that radio." That afternoon, under the blazing Normandy sun, the Germans hauled the Sherman's remains back to their field workshop. As the wreck rattled down the dirt road, Hartmann lit a cigarette and stared after it, deep in thought. He'd fought the Americans for weeks now. Fast, aggressive, almost reckless. Their tanks seemed to appear from nowhere, striking from flanks his scouts swore were empty minutes before. He'd blamed it on numbers, on their air support. But now, looking back, he realized there was something else. Something invisible linking every move they made. Communication. And it was sitting right there, bolted into the hull of a tank the Germans had always considered inferior. July 19th, 1944. German field workshop, near Vire, Normandy. The smell of hot oil and burnt metal hung in the air. Beneath a tattered canvas awning, mechanics worked over the captured Sherman like surgeons on a strange new specimen. The vehicle's armor was peeled back, its interior gutted, wires and cables dangling like veins. Oberleutnant Ernst Hartmann stood beside Hauptmann Wilhelm Krüger, a technical officer from Panzergruppe West. Krüger wiped soot from his spectacles and leaned inside the turret. "So this is the American secret, eh?" muttered. Hartman nodded. Not armor, not the gun. The secret's invisible. It's how they talk. Kruger adjusted a dial on the small black box bolted behind the commander's seat. The radio crackled to life, a faint hiss followed by bursts of static. Then, through the interference, came a voice, English, fast, clipped, urgent. Able 2, this is Baker 4. Axis armor moving east of St. Lo. Adjusting course, over. The Germans froze. Another reply came almost immediately. Copy, Baker. Flanking east. Fire for effect in 5 mics. Out. Kruger stepped back, stunned. My God. They coordinate like artillerymen. Hartman lit a cigarette, his face half hidden in smoke. Every tank, every platoon, all connected. That's how they move so fast. He looked over at his own men tinkering with a heavy, bulky Fuji 5 radio from a disabled Panzer IV. It was larger, slower to tune, and there was only one per platoon. Most Panzer crews still used colored signal flags to communicate under fire, a relic of 1940 tactics, now fighting in a 1944 war. Kruger frowned. This system, it changes everything. No wonder they outmaneuver us. We shout across the battlefield. They whisper. That evening, German engineers disassembled the Sherman's radio setup entirely. They mapped out every circuit, every wire, trying to reverse engineer the technology. The more they studied it, the clearer the truth became. The Americans had built not just a tank, but a network. Inside the Sherman's wrecked turret, they found notes scrawled by the crew, call signs, range tables, even shorthand codes for air coordination. There were no flag signals, no runners. Orders flowed by radio. Fluid, instant, lethal. This explains the ambushes, Hartman said quietly. They can change direction in seconds. We take minutes. Kruger's expression darkened. Speed of thought. That's their real weapon. The discovery sent ripples through the German command structure. Field reports from the 2nd Panzer Division to Army Group B described the captured Sherman in detail, calling it an armored command post capable of independent coordination. But there was no time to adapt. Replacement radios were scarce. The Luftwaffe hoarded much of the remaining production capacity, and Allied bombing had crippled Germany's electronic factories. Meanwhile, on the front lines, the Americans pressed their advantage. Sherman platoons advanced through the hedgerows like chess pieces, each tank covering, flanking, or feinting on cue. To the Germans, it looked like chaos. But it wasn't chaos. It was choreography. And while Hartman's men still raised colored flags under enemy fire, the Americans were already talking, planning, and killing through the ether. That night, Hartman sat outside the tent, the wrecked Sherman silhouetted against the moonlight. He stared at it for a long while, smoke curling from his cigarette. We thought their strength was in numbers, he said quietly to Kruger. But it's not. Their strength is in unity. Every tank thinks together. He flicked the cigarette away, watching its ember fade in the dirt. We're fighting an army that can talk to itself, Wilhelm. How do you beat that? July 28th, 1944, near Saint-Denis-le-Gast, Normandy. The hedgerows were burning. The night sky pulsed with flashes of artillery, green, red, yellow, each explosion reflecting off the low clouds like a heartbeat of the war. In the darkness, Oberleutnant Ernst Hartmann's panzer column lay hidden along a dirt road, waiting for orders that never seemed to come. The radio in his Panzer IV hissed with static. He picked up the handset and tried again. Commando Zentrale, this is Panther 1, requesting grid confirmation. Repeat, grid confirmation. Nothing. just the empty crackle of the ether. He glanced across the ditch to the next tank. Its commander, Unteroffizier Meissner, waved a red flag from his hatch, the signal to hold position. In the darkness, it looked almost pathetic. Colored flags in 1944 under Allied spotter planes and artillery. Hartmann shook his head. A few kilometers ahead, the woods lit up with fire. The Americans were moving, fast, too fast. The ground began to tremble with the low, rhythmic thump of tank engines. Shermans. Dozens of them. Inside the German line, confusion spread like wildfire. Without clear radio communication, messages passed by couriers, men running through the dark, dodging tracer fire, shouting directions that were already obsolete by the time they reached the next unit. "The enemy is flanking left," one shouted. "No, east, east," another corrected. Hartmann slammed his fist against the radio. "Verdammt! We're blind out here." Through the periscope, he caught glimpses of muzzle flashes. The Americans were already in position, Shermans firing from multiple angles, covering each other with surgical precision. He didn't understand how they'd moved so fast, until he remembered the radio he'd seen inside that wrecked tank weeks ago. "They're talking to each other," he murmured. That's how, in the darkness, Sherman crews exchanged clipped, calm transmissions. "Red 2, swing right and suppress that tree line." "Copy, Red Leader. Green platoon, flank and west. We've got you covered." Every tank, every platoon, perfectly synchronized. Hartmann gave frantic orders to his own platoon. "Meissner, shift to cover our right," he shouted into the mic. But Meissner's radio was out. His flag disappeared into the smoke. Seconds later, an armor-piercing shell slammed into Meissner's Panzer, tearing through the turret ring. Flames erupted from the hatch. The tank lurched sideways and fell silent. "Driver, reverse, reverse!" Hartmann yelled. His own gunner fired blind into the darkness, hitting nothing. Another explosion rocked the ditch ahead. The American formation closed in, their guns flashing through the night. Hartmann's crew could hear them. The rumble of engines, the sharp bark of commands, the calm chatter over their radios, all coordinated like one living organism. The Germans were outnumbered. But worse, they were outcommunicated. When dawn finally broke, the road was lined with wrecks. Smoke drifted low over the fields, and the buzz of American recon planes circled above. Hartmann climbed from his half-destroyed tank and stared at the advancing Shermans rolling through the morning mist, their antennas swaying gently as they moved. Each one was connected to the other, a silent network of voices guiding them forward. His radio sputtered one last time, a garbled order from divisional command that arrived hours too late. He tossed the handset aside and muttered to himself, almost in awe. "They fight as one mind, and we fight as scattered men." Behind him, the remnants of the 2nd Panzer Division began to retreat eastward, the Allied tide unstoppable now. The battlefield fell quiet, except for the hum of American radios, whispering through the air like a new kind of weapon. The lesson was unmistakable. The Americans didn't just win with armor, they won with communication. And that morning in Normandy, the Wehrmacht finally understood what it meant to face an army that could think out loud. August 1944, German command post, Mortagne, France. The air inside the farmhouse headquarters was thick with smoke and defeat. Maps littered the wooden table, arrows, unit markers, and frantic corrections drawn over one another in red pencil. Through the shattered windows came the distant rumble of engines and the low thud of artillery from the west. Oberleutnant Ernst Hartmann stood before a captured American radio set. the same model he'd found in that burned-out Sherman weeks earlier. The box still bore the serial plate, SCR 508. Its black knobs and dials glinted in the dim light of an oil lamp. Across the room, Major Klaus Riener, operations officer for XL Femer Panzer Corps, read from the latest situation report. The Americans have broken through near Avranches. They are using armored columns to encircle us. Every time we regroup, they're already there. He slammed the paper down. How do they coordinate so quickly? Our scouts can't even track them. Hartman gestured to the radio. With this. Reiner frowned. A single tank radio? You think that's the reason we're losing? Hartman stepped forward, his voice tight. Not a single radio, all of them. Every Sherman, every half-track, every Jeep. They speak constantly. They adapt instantly. He twisted the tuning dial. The speaker hissed, then came alive with English voices, clear, efficient, terrifyingly calm amid the chaos of war. Blue 4, maintain formation. Red section, advance to grid 7-3. Infantry reports clear road to Mortain. Out. Reiner listened, his face pale. They're coordinating armor, infantry, and artillery through one channel. Hartman nodded. We plan on maps. They plan in real time. Outside, the ground shook as another salvo of American artillery landed nearby. German soldiers dove for cover, shouting over the blasts. Hartman turned down the radio and leaned on the table, staring at the map of Normandy. The red arrows of the American advance spread like fire across the paper. Our panzers are better, he said quietly. Our guns hit harder. But none of it matters if we can't move together. We react, they anticipate. Reiner rubbed his temples. We can't copy their system now. The factories are gone. The lines are bombed. Hartman looked up. Then we've already lost. That night, the Panzer Corps attempted one final counterattack near Mortain. Operation Lüttich. The plan was desperate. Cut off Patton's advancing armor by striking west. But as the German tanks advanced through the mist, confusion reigned. Radio interference, poor coordination, and outdated intelligence turned the assault into chaos. By dawn, American thunderbolts were in the air. The columns were spotted, and within hours, destroyed. The few surviving panzers scattered back into the bocage, hunted relentlessly. Meanwhile, Allied radio networks buzzed with flawless synchronization. Eagle Base, this is Red Dog. Enemy armor retreating east, marking targets for airstrike. Copy, Red Dog. Bombers inbound in 10. For Hartman, the sound of those calm, confident voices over the airwaves would haunt him long after the battle. They were everywhere, a chorus of coordination that Germany could never match. Days later, as the front collapsed and orders came for a full withdrawal toward the Seine, Hartman packed what remained of his gear. Before leaving the farmhouse, he paused by the captured SCR 508. For a moment, he simply stared at it. The black box that had rewritten the rules of armored warfare. He thought of how he and his men had once mocked the American tanks as crude, mass-produced machines. But now he understood. The Americans didn't build tanks to fight alone. They built systems to fight together. He switched the radio on one last time. Static filled the air. Then a distant voice. An American tank commander somewhere beyond the horizon. All units, push forward. Keep formation. The road's clear. Hartman smiled bitterly. Yes, he murmured. It's clear for you. He switched it off, tucked his Luger into his belt, and stepped out into the ruins of Normandy. A defeated soldier walking through the wreckage of an old world, replaced by one that could think, talk, and strike faster than any man alone. In the months that followed, the German army would never recover its ability to coordinate. The Allies advanced relentlessly, guided not just by tanks and men, but by voices carried through the ether, the invisible weapon of modern war. And in every Sherman that rolled toward the Rhine, the small hum of a radio whispered the same truth. Communication had become the new firepower.